This is my audience, and I'm going to hand it over to the cameraman. So imagine how you would feel if your small Honda Civic, just got slammed into by a pretty big car, a Cadillac Escalade, and there are two small children in the back, one whose side got slammed into. It all started on a warm, sunny spring morning. I was driving my little brother and sister to the babysitters where I would drop off my little sister. And the neighbor to the babysitter, the woman who drove the Escalade, always drove really fast. Not only on the road, but in and out of her driveway. So whenever I drove to the house, I would always take that into consideration. And on this particular morning, she started to back out of her driveway. And I noticed this, so I stopped and I waited for her out of common courtesy, even though I had the right of way. So I waited for her for about half a minute, and she didn't go, so I thought maybe she was waiting for me. So as I went to my parking spot, I hear this very loud noise that sounds like a crushing of metal, and I was jolted back and forth in my seat. And I was really scared. And I was scared for Nicholas because it was his side, and I was scared of the damage that was done and if anybody else got hurt in the other car. So I moved forward so I wasn't in the road, and I got out of my car and I looked at the damage that was done, and there was a huge dent between the back end of the door and the front end of the bumper, and there is a big dent underneath the gas tank, and part of the bumper was sticking out in such a way that it rubbed against the tire, and the tire itself was covered with a bunch of scratches. And I looked at the driver's car, and there were a lot of scratches, no dents, which was good, but a lot of scratches nonetheless. So the driver came out, and I could see on her face that she knew it was her fault, but she started to blame me for what had happened. And there was no more shock, there was no more being scared. I was furious that she was trying to blame me for her negligence. She could have potentially hurt her family and her car, and also mine. So I'm ashamed to say I did yell at her, and I started to say that it was her fault for this whole car accident, and I wasn't at blame. So I told Nicholas to get the babysitter out here just so I can have another witness, and at that moment I remembered the 4 steps that my parents had drilled me on car accident occasion. So the first thing you want to do is check to see if anybody got hurt, and the second is call the police or family member. In this case, I called my parents first and then the police. The third thing you want to do is get their information. You want to get their name, their phone number, their address, their license plate, and you want to see their registration and their license. And also give them yours. And the fourth thing you need to do is take pictures of everything. And I don't mean just your car, I mean their car, them, their license plate, their license, registration, where it happened. You want to get a lot of pictures. So the first thing that I did was call my dad, and I remember yelling at the phone. I wasn't yelling at him, I was just very upset, and as I was telling him what had happened, I remember the image vividly, and I was so upset by what had happened, and he said that he was coming over, so that made me feel better. And then I called my mom, and I could hear worriness in her voice, and that really calmed me down, and I took it a notch down, and she suggested that I call the police. So I finished talking with her, and I called the police, and I remember that conversation. I was cool and confident, and I was really acting like an adult in that situation. And afterwards, I heard the woman crying, and she came over to me and she asked if I called the police, and I told her I did, I needed to, and she just started sobbing really hard, and she went back into her car. And my dad came at that moment, and I told him everything that had happened, and he started talking to the woman, and I remember her saying that her insurance is already high and it would go higher. She has 3 children that are in school, and she's a single working mother. That really got to me, and it did make me feel kind of sad, but at the same time, maybe this would be a learning experience for her to be slower when she's driving. So the policeman came, and we told him our side of the story, and I remember not feeling scared anymore. I was confident in myself. I felt relief, after I told him my story and I wasn't scared anymore. And the police left after he gave us a report, and then I thanked the lady for participating and for just being a good citizen by telling the police what had happened. And so she left. And after that, I had overwhelming with relief that my dad was there with me and that I had followed all the steps and that I remember them also. And I will never forget two things out of that situation. One, to always be a careful and safe driver. I always now assume that people don't know the rules of the road and they don't follow them, so it's my responsibility to be a cautious driver. And the second thing I won't forget are the steps that you need to take when you get in a car accident. So I hope you guys will follow the steps and also avoid car accidents by being safe when driving. Thanks, and I will show you my audience one more time.